All right.
So we want to talk about our last segment, which is unfortunately it is not as positive as we would like.
Let's not open with a joke this time.
Yeah, it's the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, which, for those of you who do not know, Ghislaine Maxwell is the confidant, romantic partner, and second in command for Jeffrey Epstein and his various endeavors, we should say.
Yes.
She is currently on trial for her participation in the sex trafficking, prostitution, and the unfortunate sexual assault and rape of minors and women.
I think she's got 6 charges, 3 of them being conspiracy, and then the others being incitement, trafficking, and transport. I think would transporting be a separate one? I have to look at the article.
I believe transporting would just fall under trafficking.
I think so. I think the other one.
Wait, no, transporting. The difference between transporting and trafficking is, I believe, trafficking you have to cross some form of lines, like state line or country line, while
Okay.
transporting would be within one sort of municipal area.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the article in front of me right now, and it's a long one.
It's a very long article. We will link it in the description.
Yeah. But as far as like this is concerned, I ever since like the Netflix documentary came out about this whole situation, it almost slipped my mind that this was happening. Like we needed to know as like the general public what is going on with this because like this is like the controversy of the decade.
Yeah. And the thing is that the unfortunate reality of this situation is that, like many situations like this, it was known within the public knowledge. It was available publicly for years,
And then
and it was just simply
the New York Times article that we looked into for this segment is that she's also being put. There are also charges against her for perjury, which are going to be taken care of separate from this trial due to her. I think it was lying in court in 2016.
yes.
Yeah.
And so the things to bring up about this trial is one, that it is, and I think I can speak for both of us, our belief that Ghislaine Maxwell is guilty of all charges, that she is very much complicit in allowing for the abuses that were suffered under Jeffrey Epstein, his associates, and herself. I believe she is 100% an active and complicit member of this conspiracy. And I say conspiracy not in the conspiracy theory sense, but conspiracy by legal definition.
Yeah.
I believe she is a 100% active and complicit member of this conspiracy. I think that it's fair to say that we believe that she is guilty of our charges and she should be prosecuted and convicted to the fullest extent of the law, and that she should be locked up for the rest of her days.
Because I think like the charges that she has against her could put her up away for 70 years,
which would constitute pretty much the rest of her life, considering.
Like she's almost to her 50s, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think she's in her 40s. I think she's way older. I believe Ghislaine Maxwell is around her 50s, if not 60s. Let me
All right, I guess we're actually pulling up the article this time,
huh? I was actually just gonna check her. I was just gonna check out how old she was.
Yeah.
But regardless, I believe she will die in prison if she does get the maximum of 70 years.
Yeah, definitely.
Ghislaine Maxwell is currently 59 years old.
59. Okay, so it's approaching 60, not 50.
So yeah, she will, if prosecuted to the fullest extent and convicted, she will most likely die in prison, and that is a fate that is, in my opinion, too light for her, considering all the suffering and damages that she has caused to not just the victims that are currently part of the prosecution that are helping to try and bring her to justice, but the many unsung, unknown victims that we may never know about due to various circumstances such as bribery, fear, and potential death.
Yeah.
So I really want to say that this trial is important, For one, because we will finally see, in some capacity, some level of accountability for a rich and powerful individual's participation in said crimes. And I unfortunately have the opinion that many of the people named potentially in this trial will not suffer any consequences, such as former President Bill Clinton, former President Donald Trump, Prince Andrew of the United Kingdom, and many other celebrities that were named within the papers, such as celebrities such as, I believe, Chris Tucker, among others.
Yeah.
And I do not believe any of them will suffer major consequences due to the nature of our legal system, but I do believe that if Ghislaine Maxwell is put behind bars and rots in prison, that is at least some form of a victory.
Yeah. And what I found truly disgusting about this case is what the defense lawyers have been saying in defense of her.
Yes,
Which, I mean, it is unfortunately their job, but it doesn't make it any less disgusting
yeah.
and more infuriating.
So the two things that the defense has been mainly using is one, that the victims are lying and that they are
Or
doing
not that they're lying. Well, I guess lying is a little bit, but their memories are corrupted by the media outcry.
Yeah,
they say
the two big arguments are that their memories have been corrupted by the recent media outcry, and or they are lying because they want to have a gigantic settlement from the. The other arguments that they are using is the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell was not in any way complicit and that she was just in the shadow of Epstein, completely oblivious to what was happening.
And they're using, like, they're replacing him and putting her in his chair.
Yeah. They're basically saying that she is just being, effectively she's being
the scapegoat.
Lynched by the mob.
Yeah.
For...
Which, let's face the fact, many people have said this, and I am confident in saying this. They are partners in crime.
They are definitely partners in crime. In fact, there was a star witness, I believe his name is... Don't quote me on this. I thought his name was Kevin Porter, but he was the private pilot for Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't think that was his name. I think it was something a little more un-American.
Let me check. But regardless of what his name is, his job was being a private pilot for Epstein and Maxwell, and he very much described how active she was in a lot of his endeavors, and how she was definitely someone that was, there, and would have some form of, high position. Anything you would like to contribute on that
front? Yeah, because the pilot was one of the first witnesses to come up.
Yes, he was considered the star witness of the day one.
Yeah, which this trial is most likely going to go on for more than a month.
Oh, definitely.
Because of all of the information that's going to be compiled. Because, for reference on another case we covered, the Rittenhouse trial didn't last nearly as long as this one could potentially be.
Yeah.
And so...
I want to find this pilot's name because I want to. Okay. So I want to find this pilot's name because I want to be correct. Mr. Vysotsky. His name is Lawrence Paul Vysotsky Jr.
Okay.
Very different from Kevin Porter. But Mr. Vysotsky did describe that Ghislaine Maxwell was very much involved in Epstein's escapades.
Thankfully, for the sake of the victims, they are also using synonyms or aliases for the trials to protect them, because...
As we saw with the various sexual assault cases brought against former President Donald Trump, many of them that used their actual names were very much bullied by the general public into recanting their statements and recanting entire lawsuits. So thankfully with this one, we are dealing with people who will have pseudonyms and who will probably never be revealed to the public what their real identities are. And I believe that is absolutely for the best.
Yeah.
I believe one of the testimonies that we have is someone under the pseudonym Jane who described how Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein approached her at a park and how they bonded over the fact they lived in Palm Beach and how Palm Beach, Florida specifically, and how specifically Ghislaine Maxwell would groom her by taking her on extravagant shopping trips and slowly but surely get her used to the various abusive advances made by Jeffrey Epstein. And if that is true, which I'm inclined to believe, that is absolutely disgusting, as it would, one, show that she knew exactly what she was doing when she would confront people, not confront, approach people. She would either approach one-on-one with the shopping trips where it would just be the victim and Ghislaine, and they would go on extravagant shopping trips, or would approach with Epstein himself, and they would engage in what would be friendly banter and conversation in an effort to lower one's guard and make themselves become personable before they strike and reveal themselves to be the monsters that they are.
Yeah.
And I just,
Yeah.
the main
Because-
reason,
Because the big
yeah.
thing, because everyone, when Epstein was first arrested, everyone was paying attention to this.
Yes.
And then that was further exemplified by the release of the Netflix documentary, which revealed a lot of victim testimony, or not testimony, but a lot of victim interviews that revealed stuff that they had to tell about what happened to them.
One thing that I feel is very important to address is twofold. One, the fact that this stuff exists, as some people felt was validation to the QAnon conspiracy theory of the deep state and its various connections to sex trafficking and the abuse of minors. And I would like to say that while this does exist, and while there most definitely are cabals of people that participate in these actions that involve people of power, this does not in any way validate the conspiracy theory that the elites of the world are all complicit specifically, and they really try to hammer home the fact that these elites are the liberals and Democrats in the American government that are performing these things in some form of satanic ritual to extend their own life and gain powers. That is not the case. The reality of the situation is that there are many people in this world that are abusive and evil, and they do not view people as people. They view them as objects and tools, and they have formed entire, basically, syndicates or cabals around the idea that they can just use people for their own pleasure because they don't view them as people. And I think that's what really this is a case of. It's not a case of the world elites coming together for some type of ultimate power. It's about the I would say the unhealthy, toxic, abusive, and evil hedonism that several people have. And the other thing I want to address is how can we avoid things like this in the future? And I feel that one of the important things that we need to do, education, we need people, especially young people and children, to understand their bodies and to understand that they have boundaries that they are allowed to set up, and that no one, especially people in positions of power, are entitled in any way to touch or in any way do something to those parts of your body, and that you have personal autonomy and personal space. I believe that is something that we need to be teaching our children. Another thing that needs to be done is we very much need to work on income inequality. Many of the girls that have been unfortunately victimized were enticed to first interact with Mr. Epstein and I don't know why I called him Mr. Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, under the pretext that they would be working some form of a job. And many of them felt that they needed the income because they wanted to pay for things that they needed, like bills, or that they would somehow, or that this money would be some form of a job that would allow them to finally obtain money so they could potentially up their station in life, not knowing that this was a trap. And so we definitely need to address income inequality because things like the very things like sex trafficking and human trafficking in general are usually born out of the victims being in a position of vulnerability financially. So that needs to be addressed. And I believe the final thing, and mind you, this is just three big things. There are a million different things that contribute to this entire just I can't even find the proper words to describe just the entirety of these acts of evil. But the third thing that we need to address is the fact that we need to do away with the previously established gender roles that we have that have caused the harm that allowed for these various people to be abused because they were socialized to be submissive or they were socialized to not in any way communicate how they felt or communicate with other people because of just the various different gender roles that men and women suffer from. Women are socialized to not be in any way open about sexuality or sexual experiences, meaning that many of them don't get to really talk about things that have gone wrong and necessarily find out what went wrong, and that maybe the things that they were experiencing were wrong and they were valid for feeling uncomfortable. The same goes for men. Men are also conditioned to be this way. Men are also conditioned to accept advances from women, even if they are not comfortable with them, and thus many men are also assaulted. Many men have their bodily autonomy threatened and violated at numerous points, and they are just told to deal with it. And I think those mentalities definitely contributed to the proliferation of these actions. And I think these three are some of the things that we really should address as a society to ensure that we can avoid things like this. Anything you want to add?
So, we mentioned this before with the Rittenhouse trial. This is where we will learn the most about what happened. Now, again, I've mentioned this a few times, but we did learn a lot about the situation that happened through the Netflix documentary and through reporting that happened after the arrests of these two. But this trial will uncover the probably most factual parts of this conspiracy, or these acts of conspiracy, and this the impact of this trial will be massive,
Yeah,
without a doubt.
most definitely. Um, I know this was a very, very bleak and in some ways disturbing segment to end on, but we felt that it was necessary to address this trial as it's happening and address just this entire scandal to begin with because of how evil it is. It's evil.
Yeah.
I don't think I can stress how just evil it all is and how we cannot make light of that fact. There are many different conspiracies going on about how, if whether Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, whether he was assassinated, and this, that, and the other thing. But I think the main dialogue that we should be having is about the victims and the sympathy and empathy that we should be having for them, the support that we should be giving to them, and the fact that we need to be improving the societal mechanisms that we have to, one, help people that are victims of these things and to prevent people from being victims of these things. We need to increase support for victims of assault of all genders. We need to be educating people about the various ways that your body can be violated by anyone, and that it is not something that you are supposed to take because of whatever anyone tells you. If you feel uncomfortable, you should not be forced to partake in actions, especially ones of a sexual nature. You do have the right to say no, and if someone does not respect that, then they are someone that is violating you, and that is not right. It is awful, and it's terrible. And this is just, in some ways, a culmination of a lot of terrible issues that I don't even want to say is localized to the United States, something that the world needs to be addressing.
Right. And I know that with the ending of these two segments,